Today, I'm going to talk to you about UC and MNCs. My name is Michael Diamond. I'm the Group CEO of Comms Group Limited. Over the last 2 decades across telecommunications, one thing has become very clear to me. Communication is no longer just an IT function, it's critical infrastructure. When it fails, everything stops. Today, we're going to reinforce some of the insights that Patrick and Trent gave us today around the Asia Pacific region, and specifically about what it takes to be an MNC provider. So at Comms Group, we specialize in unified communications for MNCs and enterprise, whether it be through our wholesale channel or through platform providers. We were established in 2018. We're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. We have headquarters just around the corner in Clarence Street, and our offices are in Singapore, Philippines, and the United Kingdom today. In addition to our global business, we also operate a number of domestic businesses here in Australia. And it gives us a really strong comparison and juxtaposition between what Next Telecom and Tasmanet do versus what On Platinum does, our IT MSP versus our global business. Today, we service 65 countries globally. So that's 65 unique markets in which we provide voice services. We interconnect in 15 super pop locations, primarily across APAC, Europe, North and South America, Middle East and Africa. We are a global leader in UCaaS and CPaaS, and we can roll up our services into Microsoft Teams Direct Routing, Operator Connect, and Cisco WebEx. Many of our wholesale customers much prefer a wholesale CTS solution or otherwise a managed service, as I've explained there. Comms Group is really proudly one of the most comprehensively licensed carriers in APAC today. We have subsidiaries across Asia Pacific, as you can see there, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Indonesia, Philippines. And to our knowledge, we are the only foreign licensed carrier in Philippines and Vietnam. So let's touch on some of our products and services. We are offering full PSTN replacement, so local domestic geographic services in up to 65 markets. And we can hand off either as a SIP trunk for traditional PBX solutions, whether it be for a hosted PBX solution, or through a wholesale CTS trunk. And many of our partners and customers are here today. We can deliver toll-free services across Asia Pacific, including Australia and New Zealand. And we also have a wide range of value-added services. So analytics and sentiment, contact center, and call recording. And as I mentioned earlier, we are a Microsoft Teams Direct Routing and Operator Connect partner. We are also a Cisco WebEx partner. One of the questions we often get from our customers is, well, what about the legacy stuff? What about the ATAs? What about some of the, the lift phones? We have a range of solutions available in a number of countries where we can procure, maintain, and support on-premise hardware. We can provide remote hands and solution engineering. And we can do that on a white label basis for a lot of our carrier partners. The really important thing about domestic services in the Asia Pacific region is that it needs to be full PSTN replacement. So that means that it supports emergency calling, it supports CLI. We have the opportunity to deliver porting. In many of those regions, porting is not a legal requirement. It's not built into their processes. But in those instances, we can do internal migrations also. So we have a wide range of solutions across multiple markets. So today, I want to talk about the great UC migration for enterprise. The fact of the matter is, today we are witnessing one of the fastest enterprise migrations in technology history. For 30 years, telephony barely moved. Nobody upgraded a PBX until lightning struck a building. Then suddenly everything accelerated. In the post-COVID world, analysts forecast that by the end of this decade, the overwhelming majority of enterprise telephony workloads will sit in cloud platforms. So think about that for a moment. 30 years of infrastructure is being replaced in less than 10. That isn't evolution, that's evacuation. MNCs are abandoning traditional PBX solutions across the APAC region. Multinational corporations are leading it. Not because cloud is fashionable, not because their workforce have different requirements. It's because of this global teams and time zone collaboration. There's an expectation that hybrid work and global hiring is what is driving this UC uptake. One of the other benefits of UC migration is quite simple. For a multinational corporation to save 30% of their overall telecom cost savings by consolidating their existing UC platforms into a single platform is really paramount. And by 2030, we expect more than 75% of organizations to adopt some kind of AI solution, whether it be real-time translation, transcription, automation, or meeting intelligence. But for MNCs, they have higher expectations around things like data sovereignty, around encryption, around compliance. If you're not delivering solutions that are compliant with GDPR, HIPAA, ISO 27001, you're being left behind in the contracting landscape. As we heard earlier, MNCs are looking for a cloud-first, mobile-first, converged platform strategy. That's really difficult when, as we mentioned earlier, we've got 20 or 30 disparate APAC markets today. Asia Pacific represents an amazing growth opportunity globally. I've got here 20% compounding growth, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 15. And in that range, we expect the market to increase from 40 to over $100 billion by 2032. So if you're not involved in that migration, if you're not talking to your customers today, ultimately you're going to be left behind. Some of the key markets that we're seeing at the moment, we mentioned India, but obviously the rise of manufacturing in Japan. It's had a bit of a renaissance, but also markets like Vietnam and Indonesia. I mean, they have huge populations, they have huge capability and obviously a very cheap labor workforce. So we're seeing a lot of manufacturing come into Vietnam. A lot of multinational corporations are moving their manufacturing out of China and towards Vietnamese factories. So today, what is the mistake that most CIOs and MNCs make? It's very simple. They believe choosing a global UC platform creates a global experience. Anyone who has actually deployed a voice solution APAC knows that isn't true. The reality is that software is global, but the voice infrastructure is not. It's very easy to spin up a Teams license, very easy to spin up a WebEx license, to provision a DID via an API, but the underlying infrastructure is disparate. In many markets, you can't order DIDs via API. You can't turn up services automatically. You need local directors, you need government IDs, you need copies of office leases. In some markets, you actually have to provide an affidavit by a C-level manager that outlines what the telecommunications service will be used for. In China, we often have to provide scripts of what staff might say during a phone call to match against a lot of the AI that the governments use to monitor calls in and out of the region. So you need to really get across the understandings around delivery processes and KYC, because at the end of the day, it is not a homogeneous market. It is not a singular expectation like maybe the EU or North America has. And some of those order delivery processes are not what you might expect. I mentioned, well, maybe there's no API, but have you ever tried to order a service via WeChat? Or there might be a group chat on Teams with an upstream provider to receive that KYC order. So for a lot of organizations, it's very difficult for them to be flexible and adaptable to very unique ways of working in the market. At the end of the day, the regulations vary everywhere. Asia Pacific is not Australia. Australia is not Asia Pacific. Australia, New Zealand, as we mentioned earlier, does have similarities to the UK, but the fact of the matter is, it is very different country to country. And sometimes you get all of this right, but one thing fails. And that's quite simply that the regulator decided that they interpret that rule differently this time around. And organizations need to be adaptable. You need to be able to understand how to address that. Technology is not the constraint here. The reality of the markets are. So today I want to give you a little bit of an anecdote on our experiences in Japan. We mentioned Japan earlier with Patrick and Trent. Early on in our journey, we had a customer who needed services in Japan, and we spoke to a very commonly known APAC carrier. They're existing in the market today, and we looked at their marketing brochure. Their marketing brochure says, yeah, absolutely, we cover Japan. That's part of our capability. Talking to the sales reps, talking to the operations teams, they delivered us a Japanese service. We were happy. Until one thing happened. The customer tried to make an emergency call. It didn't go through. Worse, actually, it's not that it didn't go through, it actually went through, but the police ended up at a data center. Why? Because that carrier was using an ISDN interconnect to terminate calls to the emergency services team, the emergency services operations center. The address on that ISDN service was the data center. So of course, all hell breaks loose, and we speak to our carrier partner and said, what happened here in Japan? They said, well, we don't really have a license. But hang on, your marketing brochures say you do. So we decided very early on that it is critical for all of our key markets where customers have an expectation in the MNC space that we must be the licensed carrier. So we embarked on a journey to get our own license in Japan. And anybody who's done business in Japan understands that precision is what's important in the Japanese market. And the Japanese regulators asked us to put together an application, and we spent weeks and months putting it together. Engineering reviewed it, legal reviewed it, operations reviewed it. Frankly, I thought it was perfect. I wrote it. Feedback came back from the regulator. The first application was rejected. Not because of the content, not because of our business plan, formatting. The margins on the document were too wide. And that's the expectation, that's the precision that Japanese regulators expect. They expect that you do it the first time right. Now that sounds really frustrating, but it taught us something really important. It taught us that telecommunications regulation is not just about being technically compliant. It's about demonstrating diligence and accountability. Because if you cannot submit documentation accurately, why would anyone trust you to operate national communications infrastructure? Fast forward to December 2025. We've learned lots of lessons over that time. In December 2025, we were approached by a foreign government through one of our partners, and they needed 40,000 services, that's 40,000 DIDs and channels with airtime to be delivered to their Microsoft Teams direct routing platform in 3 weeks. Japan does not have 40,000 DIDs available. The number of DIDs in the Japanese market were exhausted, just like IP addresses, years ago. We worked over 3 weeks to contact every local carrier to buy additional inventory and migrate those services over. We actually delivered it a day early. In fact, some of the team are here today. They delivered it on Christmas Eve, a day earlier than planned. So the message here is choose your partners wisely. The reality is coverage can happily sit on a marketing brochure, but it's really important to deep dive into what CLI options are available, what emergency calling options are available. Is it full two-way geographic domestic services, or is it a forwarding number? So why is APAC different? APAC is different because of the rapid digitization and leapfrogging legacy. While we were all mucking around with superior ATAs in our Asterisk 1.2, these guys were still on PSTN and ISDN. And today, they're still using a lot of legacy solutions. They haven't had the 10 or 15 years of transition between solutions. Governments are modernizing it at really rapid pace. Telecommunications is becoming increasingly critical infrastructure. Manufacturing is expanding, and MNCs are rolling out into multiple markets simultaneously. And things like rideshare services and box shipping are really driving that, including things like manufacturing. Regulation is fragmented, whether you like it or not. This is not the EU. There is not a single framework. There isn't a single rule book that all the carriers play to. For multinational customers, they expect services to be delivered despite cultural differences, despite commercial models. They expect that complexity to be invisible, and it's up to you and us to solve it. So the expectations of enterprise are actually really quite simple. We want they don't want different providers in every country. They don't want inconsistent support desks. They don't want varying SLAs or compliance standards. They want predictability. They want a single commercial relationship, even if that means a single commercial contracting model. They want confidence, because at the end of the day, voice is still mission critical in many industries. It's integrated into collaboration platforms, contact centers, into manufacturing. That will all ground to a halt if you don't get it right. At the end of the day, customers want to make it work the same everywhere. It's the Wizard of Oz. It's the man behind the curtain. The reality is here. You have to keep that complexity invisible and consistent. So let's just quickly talk about some of the infrastructure challenges. Network maturity really varies around different regions. In some cases, you have public cloud access. So if you need to spin up SBCs or any local software platforms, you can do so. But in many markets, we rely on data centers. We actually have racks with SBCs in them, and we ensure that media call paths are kept local. Latency, routing paths, interconnected arrangements, they differ country to country. In some countries, you have to interconnect with all the carriers. In some countries, you have to interconnect with one. We remove that complexity. You can come to Comms Group, we can provide you a service, and you can call all of the numbers on the PSTN network, whereas there are a number of providers where you can only call on-net numbers. So to be really successful here, we ensure that we've got end-to-end control of the call paths. We understand that we need to be able to manipulate the SIP headers. The way Microsoft Teams works is a little bit different to the way Cisco WebEx works. And the resilience at the end of the day must be engineered, not assumed. Our belief systems around resiliency and uptime are very different to the way many of the tier 1 operators operate across the APAC region. And here's a little snapshot of our network today. Today, we've got 15 licensed markets. So primarily Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines are our strongest markets. This is where our MNC customers, our wholesale customers, are really seeing a huge amount of growth. But of course, we also have North America and the European markets, because at the end of the day, customers expect us to deliver a one-stop shop. We have an auto-scaling cloud-first architecture that can scale up to 30,000 simultaneous calls for each media server. And we're connected, obviously, to the Microsoft and Cisco peering fabrics. I'm going to upset a few of the salespeople in the room. Salespeople don't win contracts. Operations do. Because at the end of the day, delivery starts often with a proof of concept. It often starts with an education session around being a subject matter expert in that particular market. And although we can create portals and automation, that's really, really important for scaling, but you have to have human trust and knowledge. Customers expect you to be the subject matter expert at APAC, and that's really difficult when it is disparate. To be successful, you need to be flexible at APAC, to be able to work nimbly between different regions. So here's the worst recipe to banana bread. It's 1 table regulation, 2 teaspoons of infrastructure, 3 tablespoons of operations. That's our recipe. At the end of the day, we focus on being regulatory compliant first. We highly recommend you partner with a provider who's licensed, who understands emergency services, understands the requirements, and they're not trying to retrofit some existing solution. Ensure that either you or your partner is able to control the architecture. You have visibility in terms of redundancy, you understand intelligent routing, you know what the failover plans are, and that you've built a business that operates at scale. Again, every market's different. So 24/7 support is essential, and automation really helps with moving data around, but the knowledge of those individual markets, those KYC requirements I mentioned earlier, is going to be your path to success. So to finish up, this is our key takeaway from our APAC experience. Success doesn't come from moving the fastest. It comes from building the right foundations: compliance, architecture, and operations. Multinational organizations aren't just looking for connectivity, they're looking for certainty. Thank you.